And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you are. And I would like to thank the organizing committees, the organizer of this forum for giving me a slot to speak on sustainable agriculture. What I'll be talking to today will be very brief in respect of time. If you have any questions on the presentation, do let me know. So let's see. Can you see the slides?
Yes,
Yes,
no
Doctor.
problem.
All right. Hold on now. Okay, the topic of my presentation today would be sustainability in agricultural practices and their impacts on food safety and environment. And I will also go into understanding plant nutrients, element functions. So here's the outline. In the first part, I will be talking mostly on the safety of using animal manure on agriculture, especially safety to consumers and the long-term impact of it on the agriculture, okay? And the second part would be, I will be covering on functions of nutrient elements very, very briefly, and the relationship of soil pH and nutrients, which affect your money, where your money is going. Is it going into your production, or is it going to the drain? So the part one, let's start with the part one. Let me just first compare the conventional agriculture versus sustainable agriculture. Conventional agriculture is driven almost solely by productivity and profit, whereas sustainable agriculture integrates the biological, chemical, physical, ecological, economic, and social sciences in a comprehensive way to develop new farming practices that are safe and do not degrade our environment. However, while the definition mentions safe, it only addresses safety to the environment. What is missing is the safety to consumers.
Beth, please.
I would like to start this by quoting the famous quote by the Chief Seattle, because it has very relevant to this presentation, which he said, "Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons of the earth. If men spit upon the ground, they spit upon themselves." Going by this quote, we surmise that whatever we put on the earth will return back to our body. If we pollute the earth, the pollution we put on the earth will in turn pollute our body. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
So let me just continue. Going back to the definition of sustainable agriculture that I just mentioned above, the missing component in that definition is the safety to consumers. My personal view is that unless we consider the safety of those who consume our farm produce, be it crops, livestock, or fishes, we are not farming sustainably. Yes, we may profit from our farm activities, but what good is our profit if our products result in high health risk to our consumers, and higher cost of medical bills to our consumers? Our profits, instead of blessing, becomes a curse to us if we endanger the health and well-being of our consumers. Therefore, sustainable agricultural practices should be, while integrating all the components in the definition above, must and most importantly consider the health and well-being of the consumers. Next. Having said that, Let's first look at the benefits of using manure on agricultural farm. There are many benefits of using manure on the farm if they are properly composted and processed. It serves as a soil amendment for numerous economically important crops and also improves a number of soil properties, including soil physical, biological, and chemical properties. Manure provides a slow and steady release of nutrients to the plant life growing in the soil. Manure is usually an inexpensive garden fertilizer, especially for gardeners who raise livestock. Manure also have an important role Manure also have an important role to play in sustainable agriculture as it not only improves soil fertility but also the overall soil quality. Next. Next, please. However, oops. Can you back, please? The previous one. However, using manure, any manure for that matter, requires good knowledge of its composition in relation to the implication on the environment, the soil, and most of all, health risks to consumers. Poultry manure have been observed to contain potentially harmful trace elements like arsenic, copper, and zinc, which originate from the chemical used to treat diseases in commercial chicken and all other livestock or aquaculture. Raw manure can contain pathogens that can harm people and animals. Raw manure are laden with harmful bacteria such as Salmonella, E. coli, and other harmful parasites. Next. Next, please. Okay, but the oh, gosh.
My apology. I'm doing a third backup.
But the common and current practice by most farmers with regards to the use of manure, using raw manure is in leafy or short-term vegetables farm, which is a no-no practice because most leafy vegetables are harvested within 2 or 3 months. Directly applying these manure to the soil without proper composting is also a no-no practice. Using immature composting of manure is also a no-no practice. This practice, however, is very rampant among most farmers. Each time that I go to the farmer's market, I see beautiful leafy vegetables. I normally ask the sellers, what fertilizer did you use? And 100% of the time, the answer is organic. Then I will ask, what type of organic? And again, 100% of the time, they will say raw chicken manure. These common and current practice by most farmers are either due to lack of knowledge on the negative impact of raw manure to human health and environment or lack of knowledge in composting. Either way, they are detrimental to human health, especially to consumers. This is why we have to be extremely careful on how we use the manure in our farm because whatever we apply to the vegetables will return to our body or will harm our consumers. Next. So the sustainable and safe way of using manure in agricultural farm and in order to prevent the spread of diseases from animal manure and protect consumers from the risk of diseases, manure must be properly composted. If applied raw, enough time must be allowed for the manure to assimilate with or decompose in the soil, and they should be thoroughly mixed with the soil before harvest of the produce. For edible root crops, ginger, turmeric, potatoes, tapioca, taro, and all root and tuberous crop, and edibles like tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, okras, raw manure must be applied in the soil 120 days prior to harvest, that is 4 months. For fruit crop like corns and other fruit crops that does not get splashed with the soil during rain events, raw manure may be applied to the soil a little shorter time, 90 days or 3 months prior to harvest. For all leafy vegetables and herbs, because they are short-term, raw manure must never be used. And also, pet and pig's waste should never be used in edible garden due to the harmful parasites contents. Next. So here's the long-term impact of using manure, especially poultry manure as fertilizer. Can you check the previous, Alan? Previous slide. I feel like
Simon.
Okay, next. Okay. So with poultry farms keep increasing, large quantities of manures are produced, which results in large quantities of manure are disposed of to the soil or the farm, where it poses environmental challenges like eutrophication, air pollution, emission of greenhouse gases, and production of phytotoxic substances. But one of the most negative impact of long-term application of manure is salinization of the soil. In livestock and poultry farms, mineral salts are routinely added to animal feed in order to enhance animal productivity and maximize economic returns. This practice in turn results in high salt contents in animal manure, including poultry manure. So once the soil turns saline, there is little that can be done to remove the salt from it, and repeated application of it will only worsen the salinity of the soil, and it will render the soil unproductive, meaning turning the soil into dead soil. Next. So that's the end of the first practices and how you use your manure. So let me just go into the plant nutrients element functions. Next. Okay. Can you go back to the next? Okay. When we talk about plant nutrients, most people know NPK. And most people only know NPK, in fact, but that's only 3 of the elements in plant nutrients. Plants require at least 17 nutrients for normal growth and development. The plant will not grow without it, and no other element can replace it. Plants receive carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen from carbon dioxide in the air and from water. These elements are commonly referred to as the basic nutrients or structural element. The remaining 14 essential elements are minerals, most often supplied by the soil if your soil is fertile. Most often, we supplement them when they are not present in the soil. Next. Some nutrients are needed in large amounts, other nutrients only in minute quantities. Regardless of the amount required, a deficiency of any of these nutrients will limit the growth and development of your plants. Thus, a calcium deficiency can be just as detrimental to the plant as a lack of nitrogen. So each of these 17 elements is categorized as macronutrients, that is primary and secondary, or micronutrients based on the amount required by the plants. NPK, calcium, magnesium, and sulfur, in addition to carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, are macronutrients. Next. So these are the macronutrients. Next. Next slides, please. So the micronutrients are required by the plants in a very small quantities compared to the primary and secondary. And these are the micronutrients in order of their importance: the iron, manganese, zinc, copper, molybdenum, boron, chlorine, and nickel. So these round out the 14 essential plant nutrients, excluding the basic nutrients. Next. So now I will let's go to the functions of these minerals. Each of these 17 essential nutrients has specific roles or functions in plants. Some of these elements are utilized within the physical structure, that is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, which are the basis for carbohydrates such as sugars and starch, which provide the strength of cell wall, stems, and leaves, and are also sources of energy for the plant and organism that consume the plants. Some nutrients, such as NPK, affect many important plant functions, whereas others may only activate a few chemical reactions. Regardless of how large a role each nutrient plays, all are needed for the plant to develop normally. Next. So nitrogen functions most important nutrients governing all plant cultures. Under optimum growing conditions, most abundant nutrient in plant tissue. That is, if we exclude basic nutrients. If less N in the plant tissue, some seriously unhealthy plants. It is a component of nucleic acid, amino acids, proteins, vitamins, chlorophylls, and coenzymes. And it affects shoot root growth, density, color, disease resistance, and stress tolerance. Phosphorus is a very important in early stages of growth. For this very reason, starter fertilizers usually contain more P than any other nutrient. It involved in cell membrane function and integrity. It is the energy currency of plants and several coenzymes. It affects the rate of seedling development, maturation, and root growth. Without P, you will not have germinations of your seeds. And the potassium is an incredibly important component of water regulation and use in plants. Important in plant metabolism and is necessary for adaptation to stress, such as drought and cold, and disease resistance. It activates enzymes in protein, sugar, and starch synthesis. Now, for those of you who are farming fruit crop, potassium is very, very important in activating the sugar synthesis of your fruit so that you have the sweetness. Okay, next. Next. Is that, I think calcium. Calcium, as we all know, as human needs calcium, plants also need calcium. It's an extremely important element to plants, and it helps regulate cell wall construction. It is important in cell division and membrane function. Okay, and magnesium Magnesium is relatively important because it is the central element of a very important plant component, chlorophyll. It is an essential plant nutrient because the plant could not synthesize chlorophyll without magnesium. Needless to say that it would be difficult for most plants to survive without chlorophyll. So understand that without magnesium in your soil or in your management program, fertilization program, your plants will not survive because they need magnesium to synthesize chlorophyll. Next. So continue with magnesium, carbohydrate synthesis and translocation. It is also a mobilizer of your phosphorus nutrients within the plants because phosphorus is immobile in the plants. Okay, so without magnesium, your phosphorus remain where you apply. Okay, it helps in nutrient uptake and control and also improves iron effectiveness. Magnesium also is a necessary activator for many critical enzymes, including Rubisco and PAPC. Both of these are essential enzymes in carbon fixation. So the sulfur functions to enhance color density and growth in plants. It helps nitrogen to be used efficiently and greater drought tolerance and improve winter hardiness. Next. The next one is iron, important in chlorophyll formation, photosynthesis, and nitrogen metabolism. It is required for many metabolic functions in plants, including turf grasses. And it is used in greening turf grass field with less N. If any of you are golfers or like to watch golf or any sports on TV, if you see beautiful, evenly green field or golf course, that is because they spray with iron prior to the start of the tournament. Okay. Promotion of root growth, where excessive N inhibits root growth. And manganese present in chloroplast membrane and functions as enzyme activator just as magnesium is. It may be involved in resistance to some diseases. Next. Zinc is needed by plants for growth hormone production and is particularly important for internode elongation. It is involved in chlorophyll synthesis and amino acid synthesis, also in synthesis of growth hormones and iodolactic acid. Plants use zinc in conjunction with other elements to carry out many natural processes, including forming chlorophyll. Now, the next one that I would like to talk here is the boron, because boron is the most misunderstood trace element, and boron is very, very important in your crop. Okay. The primary function of boron in plants are related to cell wall formation and reproductive tissue. It plays a role in DNA synthesis and translocation of sugars. It is essential for root elongation, synthesis of nucleic acid and cell wall plasma, membrane integrity, carbohydrate, and protein formation. I haven't finished. Can you go back? Okay. It is necessary for pollen germination and pollen tube growth, leaf growth without deformation, and prevents yield losses caused by flower abortion. So many times I get a questions that people say, my mangoes are flowering, but it doesn't form into fruits, or my durian has a lot of flowers, but there is no fruit forming. So check your soil if you have boron, because without boron in the soil, you will not have fruit formation because it is a cell wall formation and reproductive tissue. Okay, it's very, very important. Boron is a very, very important also in the shape of your fruits and also the taste. Okay, next. Plants suffering from boron deficiency exhibit chlorotic, young leaves, and death of the main growing point, terminal bud, and shape of the fruits become deformed. Boron deficiency is made worse by sandy soils, alkaline soils, soils low in organic matter, high levels of nitrogen, high levels of calcium, cold wet weather, and periods of drought. Next. Now, ideally, we would like our farm produce to be uniform in shape so that it's easy to package, it's easy to export with uniform shape. But most often, if you go to any fruit stall, you don't get those uniform shape. Like the one here, the bottom pictures here shows that most durian farms, this is what you get. Ideally, this is what we would like to have. And this shows that the second one is a boron deficient farm of durian. Next. Next. Okay. Also, ideally, we would like to have a healthy mango that can be sold, but most often, this is what we get, a crack before ripening, and that shows your mango is boron deficient. And the most common is the peanuts. When you plant peanuts and you have a very, very beautiful farm, but when you pull it out harvesting, this is what you get, empty shells. That shows you have no boron in your soil. Next. And if you are planting cucumbers and you have this shape, you know that this is a plant language of the plants. Okay, they need. They're telling you that something is missing, so they cannot grow normally, and you get all the deformed fruits. Okay, next. Next. Okay, the last three is copper. Copper is needed for chlorophyll production, respiration, and protein synthesis, and a component of certain enzymes. It contributes to many natural processes, including plant metabolism and reproduction, content highest in actively growing tissue, and molybdenum, of course, is a component of enzyme that reduces nitrate in plants, and concentration highest in the leaf blade, tends to accumulate as plants reach maturity. And chlorine function has a direct role in photosynthesis and is important in osmotic adjustment of the plant and plays an essential role in stomatal regulation. And this minor nutrient stimulates photosynthesis and is believed to be involved in nutrient balance in cells. Next. Okay, I would like to end this presentation or sharing by telling you where your plant nutrients end up. Okay, how soil pH affect the availability of plant nutrients. If you look at the bottom here, it's the range of the soil pH. If you have a soil pH of the ideal pH for growing crop is between 5.5 to 7.5. That is where your fertilizer nutrients is most available to the plants. If you are applying nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, calcium, and magnesium, your soil is in the below 6 point, the availability is very, very low. So the next table I will show you. Next. Okay, this table shows where your nutrients fertilizer ends. If you have a soil pH of 4.5, 71.34% of your fertilizer is not available to the plants and they are wasted. If you have a pH, a strong acid of 5 pH, you have 54% of your fertilizer is wasted. Okay, and if you have a medium acid of 5.5, at least 33% of your fertilizer is wasted. And you can see that the ideal pH of farming, where you are not pumping your money into the drain, then you need to have at least a pH of 6 to 7, because your fertilizer is most available at the pH of 6. Okay, where you only have 20% of it wasted. So that's the end of my presentation. Sorry for all the disruption, and thank you.